Imagine being stranded on a hostile alien planet. Your food supply is gone. Your alien companion says you have 3 days to live, but then you, a human, walk back to camp carrying fresh fish, wild berries, and somehow you've already started baking bread over an open fire. This isn't science fiction. This is the story of Lieutenant David Morrison and his Vrax partner, Commander Zelith. When their scout ship crashed on planet Kepler 442b, Zelith calculated their survival odds at 4%. The rations were destroyed. The emergency beacon was broken, and the nearest rescue team was 6 weeks away. Zelith did what any logical species would do. He started planning their final days. But Morrison did something that would change how the entire Galactic Council views humanity forever. In the next few minutes, you'll discover why humans are the only species in the known galaxy that can turn a death sentence into a dinner party. You'll learn the biological secret that makes us the universe's ultimate survivors. And you'll find out why alien species now study human behavior like we study quantum physics. Because what happened next on Kepler 442b didn't just save 2 lives, it rewrote the survival protocols for every species in the Galactic Alliance. The truth behind human adaptability will shock you. Let me show you exactly how this happened. The year was 2047. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for 12 years. We were the new kids, the awkward species that asked too many questions and broke too many rules. The Vrax were different. They'd been exploring space for 6,000 years. They were logical, efficient, and never wasted resources. Zelith had survived 42 missions in hostile environments. He was a decorated commander with 3 survival medals. Morrison was 28. This was his second deep space assignment. He grew up in rural Montana, hunting with his grandfather and camping in the Rockies. The Council paired them together for a routine mapping mission. Nobody expected them to crash. Kepler 442b is what scientists call a super-Earth. It's 40% larger than our planet. The gravity is crushing, the atmosphere is breathable but thin, and the ecosystem is completely alien. When their ship hit the surface, the impact destroyed everything. Food synthesizers shattered. Water purifiers cracked. The emergency supplies were scattered across 2 kilometers of rocky terrain. Zelith's first action was logical. He inventoried what survived. 3 protein bars, 1 canteen of water, no weapons, no tools, no communication device that worked. His second action was mathematical. He calculated their metabolic rates, the available calories, and the time until rescue. His conclusion was clear. They would die in 72 hours. Morrison's response surprised him. The human looked at the landscape and smiled. This reaction confused Zelith. The Vrax don't understand optimism in the face of certain death. To them, emotions cloud judgment. Facts are facts. Death is death. But humans are different. We don't accept death easily. We see problems as challenges. And we have something most species don't: adaptability. Morrison told Zelith 5 words that day. "I'll be back by sunset." Zelith watched the human walk into the alien forest with nothing but his uniform and his hands. The Vrax commander calculated Morrison's survival odds at 0.3%. He was wrong. Now here's where things get really interesting. Morrison returned 4 hours later. He was carrying fish. 3 alien fish that looked like a cross between salmon and electric eels. They were still alive, flopping in a makeshift basket he'd woven from plant fibers. Zelith couldn't process what he was seeing. The Vrax are brilliant. They've mastered faster than light travel. They've colonized 40 star systems, but they've never learned to hunt. No advanced species has. Think about this. When you become technologically advanced, you stop needing survival skills. The Vrax haven't hunted their own food in 4,000 years. They haven't built a fire in 5,000 years. They've forgotten how to survive without technology. Humans haven't. Morrison explained his process to Zelith. First, he found a river. He tracked it by listening for water movement and watching where birds flew. Then he studied the fish. He noticed they gathered in shallow pools during the warmest part of the day. He built a spear from a straight branch and a sharp rock. It took him 20 minutes. The technique was something his grandfather taught him when he was 9 years old. He caught 3 fish in an hour. But that wasn't the impressive part. Morrison had also gathered berries. He'd tested them carefully. First, he rubbed them on his skin to check for irritation. Then he touched them to his lips. Then he ate a tiny piece and waited 30 minutes. This is called the Universal Adaptability Test. It's a survival technique taught to human soldiers and explorers for over 200 years. Morrison used it to identify 5 safe plant species in 4 hours. Zelith was stunned. The Vrax had entire databases of xenobotany. They had teams of scientists who studied alien plants for years before declaring them safe. Morrison did it by instinct and basic observation in one afternoon. Then Morrison built a fire. He used a technique called a bow drill. He found dry wood, created friction, and generated an ember. He nurtured that ember with dry grass and gentle breathing. Within 15 minutes, they had flames. The Vrax don't use fire. They haven't for millennia. To Zelith, fire was primitive, dangerous, inefficient, but fire changed everything. Morrison cooked the fish. He boiled water in a container he'd fashioned from large leaves and heated stones. He created a smoke signal that could be seen for kilometers. That night, they ate a full meal. They drank clean water. And they sat by a fire that kept them warm as the planet's temperature dropped to freezing. Zelith asked Morrison a question that would later become famous across the galaxy. "How did you know how to do all of this?" Morrison's answer was simple. "My grandfather taught me. Just in case." Just in case. Those 3 words reveal something profound about humanity. We prepare for disasters we hope will never happen. We learn skills we might never use. We practice survival techniques in a world where we can order food from our phones. Other species think this is irrational. Why learn to hunt when you have food synthesizers? Why learn to build fires when you have fusion reactors? Humans do it because we remember. We remember when we didn't have technology. We remember when survival was a daily struggle. And deep in our DNA, we know that technology can fail. Zelith realized something that night. Humans aren't just adaptable. We're the only species that actively maintains our primitive skills while developing advanced technology. We're survivors by choice, not by necessity. But if you think that's crazy, wait until you hear this. Over the next 3 days, Morrison transformed their crash site into a functional camp. He built a shelter using branches, leaves, and a technique called lean-to construction. The structure kept them dry when it rained and cool during the day. He created a water filtration system using sand, charcoal from the fire, and layered cloth from their uniforms. The water wasn't perfect, but it was safe enough to drink. He set up fishing traps in the river. These passive devices caught food while they slept. He even started making soap from animal fat and wood ash. Zelith watched all of this with growing fascination. He started documenting everything Morrison did. He recorded techniques, thought processes, and decision-making patterns. What Zelith discovered changed everything we know about intelligence. The Vrax define intelligence as problem-solving ability and knowledge accumulation. They measure it through logic puzzles and information processing speed. By their metrics, humans are average. We're smart, but not exceptional. But Zelith identified something the Vrax had never measured: practical creativity. Morrison wasn't just following instructions he'd memorized. He was adapting techniques to an alien environment. He was combining knowledge from multiple sources. He was experimenting, failing, and trying again. When his first fish trap didn't work, he redesigned it. When certain plants made him nauseous, he tried others. When the fire went out in the rain, he figured out how to restart it with damp wood. This is called adaptive intelligence. It's the ability to apply knowledge in novel situations without specific training. Most species don't have this. The Vrax are brilliant at solving problems they've encountered before. They can memorize vast amounts of information, but when faced with a completely new situation, they struggle. Humans thrive in new situations. Zelith ran tests. He would present Morrison with problems using alien materials. We need a container that holds water but can withstand heat. Morrison would study the available resources. He'd experiment. He'd create solutions that Zelith's training never covered. One day, Morrison created a primitive kiln and fired clay pottery. Zelith had never seen pottery. The Vrax jumped from primitive tools directly to advanced manufacturing. They skipped thousands of years of intermediate technology. Humans didn't skip anything. We learned every step. We mastered fire, pottery, metallurgy, chemistry, electronics, and computing in sequence. This gives us something special. We understand technology at every level. We can work with advanced computers and primitive tools with equal skill. Morrison proved this when he repaired their emergency beacon. The device was shattered. The circuits were fused. Zelith declared it irreparable without proper tools. Morrison studied it for 2 days. Then he did something incredible. He created primitive tools from the environment. He fashioned a screwdriver from a flat stone and wood handle. He made a hammer from a rock and vine. He used fishbone as a probe to separate delicate components. Then he rebuilt the beacon using spare parts, creative engineering, and techniques that combined Stone Age tool-making with advanced electronics. It shouldn't have worked. It did. When Morrison powered on the beacon using a hand-cranked generator he'd built from scrap metal, Zelith experienced something the Vrax rarely feel. Awe. The beacon transmitted. Rescue heard their signal. Help was coming. But that wasn't even the most impressive part. Zelith asked Morrison how he knew electronics could be repaired with primitive tools. Morrison explained that on Earth, humans practice bushcraft electronics. It's a hobby where people repair modern devices using Stone Age techniques. Other species found this absurd when they heard about it. Why would an advanced civilization practice primitive skills? Now they understood. Because technology fails. Ships crash. Equipment breaks. And when everything goes wrong, humans don't give up. We adapt. Morrison had saved both their lives using skills that most species considered obsolete. Skills that the Galactic Council didn't even factor into their survival training. Zelith made a recommendation in his report. Every multi-species crew should include at least one human. Not because we're the smartest, not because we're the strongest, because we're the only species that can survive when everything else fails. This brings us to the most shocking discovery of all. On day 12, Morrison did something that changed galactic history. He made dessert. While waiting for rescue, Morrison had been experimenting with the local flora. He'd found a plant that produced something similar to wheat. He'd discovered a tree that secreted a sweet sap like maple syrup. He ground the grain using 2 rocks. He mixed it with water and the sweet sap. He shaped the mixture into flat cakes. Then he baked them on hot stones near the fire. He created pancakes on an alien planet with no tools, with no recipe. When Zelith tasted them, he experienced something profound. The Vrax don't really enjoy food. They eat for nutrition. Flavor is secondary, but these pancakes were different. They were warm, sweet, and comforting. Zelith asked Morrison why he made them. They had enough fish and berries to survive. These cakes required hours of work. They served no survival purpose. Morrison's answer revolutionized how aliens understand humanity. Because, Morrison said, surviving isn't the same as living. This concept broke Zelith's understanding of survival. Every species in the galaxy approaches survival the same way. You calculate minimum requirements. You ration resources. You do exactly what's necessary to stay alive until rescue arrives. Humans don't do that. We don't just survive. We thrive. We turn disaster into adventure. We find ways to be comfortable, to enjoy ourselves, to create moments of happiness even when everything is terrible. Morrison didn't just catch food. He caught more than necessary. He didn't just build shelter. He made it comfortable. He didn't just survive. He improved their situation every single day. This is uniquely human. Zelith reviewed survival records from hundreds of species across thousands of missions. He found a pattern. When non-human crews crash or get stranded, they enter what's called survival mode. They become conservative. They ration. They wait. Their survival rates are 63%. When human crews get stranded, something different happens. They enter problem-solving mode. They explore. They experiment. They build. Human survival rates are 91%. The difference isn't physical. Humans aren't stronger than most species. We're not faster. Our senses are average at best. The difference is psychological. We have something called the optimism bias. It's a cognitive quirk where humans believe outcomes will be better than statistical probability suggests. Most species consider this a flaw, an inability to accept reality. But this flaw saves lives. When Morrison walked into that alien forest, statistical probability said he would fail. Logic said he should stay at camp and conserve energy. But his optimism bias told him he could find food, and he did. When he saw the broken beacon, logic said it was beyond repair, but his optimism bias told him to try anyway, and he succeeded. Humans succeed because we don't accept failure. We try things that shouldn't work. We attempt solutions that seem impossible. And sometimes, just often enough, we succeed. But there's more. Morrison's dessert revealed another human trait that baffled the Vrax. We seek pleasure even in crisis. Other species endure hardship. Humans transform it. Morrison sang while he worked. He told jokes to Zelith, even though the Vrax don't understand humor. He spent extra time making their camp aesthetically pleasing, arranging stones and planting flowers. These actions served no survival function. They consumed energy. They were inefficient, but they kept Morrison's mental health strong. They prevented despair. They maintained his will to survive. Zelith learned that human survival isn't just physical. It's emotional. We need to feel good, not just be alive. When rescue finally arrived on day 17, the medical team was shocked. Most stranded crews are malnourished, dehydrated, and psychologically damaged. Morrison and Zelith were healthy, well-fed, and in good spirits. The camp Morrison built was so sophisticated that the rescue commander initially thought they'd found an indigenous settlement. There was a shelter, a kitchen area, a water system, food storage, and even a primitive refrigeration setup using cold river water. Morrison had turned a crash site into a home. The rescue commander asked Zelith how long they could have survived with these systems. Zelith calculated for several minutes. His answer shocked everyone. Indefinitely. Morrison had created a sustainable living situation on an alien planet with nothing but his hands and knowledge. They weren't waiting to be rescued anymore. They were simply living while rescue happened. This is the core difference between humans and everyone else in the galaxy. Other species see survival as a temporary state, a crisis to endure until normal life resumes. Humans see survival as life itself. We adapt so completely that crisis becomes our new normal. So what does all this mean for us today? The Morrison-Zelith incident became required study at every Galactic Council training facility. Within 2 years, the Council mandated changes to all survival protocols. Every emergency kit now includes primitive tool-making guides. Every crew member receives basic wilderness training, but more importantly, they changed how they view humans. Before Kepler 442b, humans were seen as crude and impulsive. We didn't have the Vrax's logic. We didn't have the Zentari's strength. We didn't have the Krolix's telepathic coordination. We were average at everything. After Kepler 442b, the Council understood that being average at everything is actually a superpower. Specialists are brilliant in their domain. The Vrax are incredible at logic. The Zentari dominate physical challenges. The Krolix coordinate perfectly in teams. But specialists fail outside their expertise. Humans are generalists. We're decent at logic, reasonably strong, fairly coordinated, and capable of learning almost any skill given enough time. This makes us the galaxy's ultimate backup plan. Now every exploration ship has human crew members, not as scientists or soldiers, as adaptive specialists. Our job is to solve problems that don't fit into normal categories. When a ship crashes, we build shelter. When supplies fail, we find food. When equipment breaks, we repair it with whatever's available. We're the species you want when everything goes wrong. But the implications go deeper. Human companies started training programs based on Morrison's techniques. They teach executives wilderness survival. They make programmers build fires. They require engineers to practice primitive tool-making. This seems crazy. Why does a software developer need to know how to catch fish? Because the skills overlap. Catching fish requires patience, observation, adaptation, and creative problem-solving. These are exactly the skills you need to debug code or design software. Building a fire requires understanding systems, managing resources, and iterative testing. These skills apply to project management and business strategy. Human corporations realize that primitive survival skills teach the mental frameworks needed for modern problem-solving. Companies that implemented survival training saw problem-solving abilities increase by 38%. Employee adaptability improved by 52%. Other species tried to copy this. The Vrax created survival training programs. They failed. You can't teach adaptability to a species that values rigid logic. You can't teach creative problem-solving to beings who prefer proven solutions. These traits are built into human psychology. They're part of who we are. This created a new industry. Humans became survival consultants to the galaxy. We teach other species how to think like us. It's not easy. Most species struggle with our approach. They want rules, procedures, and guaranteed outcomes. We tell them there are no guarantees, only preparation, adaptation, and willingness to try. Some species are learning. The younger generations of Vrax, Zentari, and others are studying human culture with fascination. They want to understand how we think. Morrison became a celebrity. He wrote a book called Survival Without Technology. It sold 40 million copies across 12 species. He didn't become rich. He donated all proceeds to create the Morrison Foundation. This organization teaches survival skills to any species that wants to learn. The foundation has trained over 200,000 beings from 47 different species. Their slogan is simple. Hope is a survival skill. But there's a darker implication too. Some species are afraid of human adaptability. The Krolix Empire banned Morrison's book. They claim human survival techniques are dangerous. They worry that learning our methods might make their population too independent, too questioning of authority. This reveals something important. Survival skills create independence. Independent thinking threatens authoritarian systems. Humans survived on Earth because we adapted independently. We didn't wait for leaders to solve problems. We figured things out ourselves. This makes us difficult to control. Democratic societies love this about humans. We're creative, innovative, and self-reliant. But authoritarian governments fear us. The Galactic Council is watching this tension carefully. Some species want more human influence, others want less. Morrison doesn't care about politics. He continues teaching survival skills. He believes that every being deserves the knowledge to save themselves. His most famous student is a Vrax named Kelith. She's Zelith's daughter. Kelith spent 2 years learning from Morrison. She mastered fire-making, hunting, shelter building, and primitive repair techniques. Then she did something unprecedented. She became the first non-human to pass the Human Special Forces survival course, the same course that trains Earth's most elite soldiers. When asked how she did it, Kelith said something profound. "I learned to think like a human, to see problems as challenges, to believe I could succeed even when logic said I couldn't." She's now teaching other Vrax, creating a generation that combines Vrax logic with human adaptability. This is the future. Not humans dominating the galaxy, but humans teaching the galaxy how to survive. Before we wrap up, there's one final thing you need to know. 6 months after the rescue, Morrison received a message from Zelith. The Vrax commander had been analyzing human history. He wanted to understand why we developed these survival skills when other species didn't. What he discovered explains everything. Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill us. Earth has ice ages, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, hurricanes, droughts, floods, and diseases. Our planet has 5 major extinction events in its history. Most species evolve on stable worlds. The Vrax homeworld has mild weather, abundant food, and few natural disasters. The Zentari evolved on a planet with such gentle conditions that they never developed fear responses. Earth is chaos. Our ancestors survived because they could adapt faster than the planet could kill them. When ice ages came, we moved south. When droughts hit, we found new water sources. When prey disappeared, we learned to eat plants. We're survivors because our planet gave us no choice. Every other species in the galaxy evolved in relatively peaceful environments. They developed intelligence to optimize abundance, not to overcome scarcity. Humans developed intelligence to survive chaos. This explains why we're different, why we prepare for disasters, why we maintain primitive skills, why we never fully trust technology. Because deep in our DNA we remember what it's like when everything goes wrong. Zelith's research revealed something else. He found records of 37 extinct species across the galaxy. These species were thriving civilizations. They had technology, culture, and vast empires. Then disaster struck. Natural catastrophe, civil war, pandemic. These species couldn't adapt fast enough. They went extinct. Zelith calculated that humans have survived 72 events that would have destroyed any other known species. We survived because we never forgot how to live without technology. Morrison responded to Zelith's message with a video. In it, he was teaching his daughter how to make a fire. She was 7 years old. Morrison explained that every human child learns survival skills. We teach our young to swim, to climb, to build, to fix things with their hands. We do this even though most children will never need these skills. We do it because we're preparing them for a future we can't predict. This is human culture. This is who we are. Zelith understood then why humans will never go extinct. We're too adaptable, too stubborn, too optimistic. We believe we can overcome anything. And often enough, we do. The video ended with Morrison's daughter successfully creating a spark. She looked at the camera and smiled. That smile represents humanity's future. A future where we continue exploring, adapting, and surviving no matter what the universe throws at us. The Morrison-Zelith incident proved something to the galaxy. Humans aren't the smartest species. We're not the strongest, we're not the fastest or the most advanced. But we're the survivors. When ships crash, we build, shelter. When food runs out, we hunt. When all seems lost, we make dessert. Because surviving isn't enough for us. We want to live. If this opened your eyes to what makes humanity special, you need to hear what happened next. Let's recap what we discovered. Morrison and Zelith crashed on an alien planet with no supplies. Zelith calculated they'd die in 72 hours. Morrison caught fish, built shelter, created fire, repaired their beacon, and even made dessert. He turned a death sentence into a sustainable living situation. We learned that humans maintain primitive skills alongside advanced technology. This makes us adaptable when systems fail. We learned that human optimism bias and practical creativity are survival superpowers. Other species are logical but inflexible. We're less specialized but more versatile. We discovered that human survival training is now required across the galaxy. Our approach to crisis has changed how every species prepares for emergencies. And we learned that Earth's chaotic history created a species that thrives in disaster. But here's what you need to do with this information. Subscribe to this channel if you want more stories about humanity's unique place in the universe. We explore what makes us special, from our biology to our culture to our impact on the galaxy. Hit the like button if this story reminded you why human adaptability matters. Every like tells YouTube to show this video to more people who need to understand our potential. And drop a comment answering this question. What survival skill do you think is most important for humans to maintain? Fire making, hunting, building, or something else entirely? I read every comment. Your answers help shape future videos. If you want to dive deeper into human uniqueness, watch my video about why humans are the only species that practices controlled aggression. It explores how our capacity for violence paradoxically makes us the most peaceful species in the Galactic Council. The Morrison story isn't just about survival. It's about what happens when a species refuses to give up, when we choose to thrive instead of merely endure. Every human carries Morrison's spirit, the ability to look at impossible situations and say, "I can fix this." That's our legacy. That's our gift to the galaxy. So the next time life gets hard, remember Lieutenant David Morrison. Remember that humans don't just survive disasters. We make dessert afterward. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.